Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hoops HQ show. Seth Davis along with Andy Katz. I'm reporting to you from Atlanta, Georgia, where I am reporting for my television duties with True TV. And Andy is in the great Northeast, buried under several feet of snow. We appreciate, Andy, you joining us. I know that you've been grounded. You were supposed to be in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Couldn't get out of the snow. Hopefully, at some point, they will let you leave. Later on in the show, we're going to be joined by Duke coach Jon Scheyer, coach of the new #1 team in America, absolutely cruising. And, of course, Andy's choice for National Coach of the Year. So once Andy wrote that, then Jon agreed to be on the show. So that's why Andy wrote that column. So, Andy, great to talk to you. Let's dive right into some of the hot topics, and especially looking ahead to the weekend, because we are headed down the stretch in late February. So many good games. Let's start with Houston, because the Cougars have now lost 3 straight. And every loss that they have picked up this season has been a very respectable loss. The last 3 losses at Iowa State, home to Arizona, and at Kansas. Certainly nothing to be ashamed about with any of those. The other 2 losses this season were by 3 to Tennessee at the Players' Era way back in November, and then they lost by 4 points at Texas Tech at full strength. How concerned are you about the Houston Cougars?
Not concerned that they're going to be a potential second weekend team. I was never sold that they were a Final Four national title team. I thought they were in that next tier. I still believe that. And look, what Kelvin Sampson and his staff have done in their first few years in the Big 12 is really unprecedented. The fact that they came in, and it's all blurring together a little bit for me. If it was last year or the year before, when they went, I think it was 19-1, and the one loss was at home, and they actually went undefeated on the road. That is just unprecedented in a league like the Big 12. They're playing a brutal schedule, back to back to back on these Saturday, Mondays, and so on. So I'm not shocked that they've taken on a little bit of water here because of who they're losing to. No offense to Colorado and Arizona State, but that's not who they're losing to. They're losing to the best teams in the league, either on their home court or got beat at home by Arizona. So I'm not worried, because I think they are who they are, which is a second weekend team.
Well, listen, I very much thought of them as a Final Four national championship team. It's interesting. We hear people talk about, well, their defense isn't quite as good as it's been the last couple of years. They're still 8th in the country in efficiency on KenPom. That is down a couple of notches from where they've been. I think if anything about Houston was interesting, Andy, is they are relying a little bit more on freshmen than we have seen in the past. Especially when you're talking about Kingston Flemings and Chris Sinak. They're starting 2-3 starters as freshmen in a particular game. They're falling a little bit into that pattern of waiting for Flemings to be Superman, which he's been at times. Milos Uzan had a good game in their last outing, but he's quietly had like a not awesome year, not a bad year by any stretch. But I still think of Houston as a Final Four national championship caliber team. But the reality is, when they have gone against the best of the best, they have competed well and fallen short. And so there's no doubt that they have some things to figure out. They've got Colorado, Baylor, Oklahoma State to finish. They may win all 3 games, but maybe entering March Madness with a little bit of a question mark as to whether or not they were as good as a lot of us thought. Keeping it inside the Big 12, Texas Tech is now 2-0 without JT Toppin. We were both a part of the bracket exercise, and in the top 16 reveal last weekend, Keith Gill, the chair of the selection committee, said the committee kind of downgraded Texas Tech just a little bit because Toppin had gotten hurt, but they had not played any games yet. Now, the wins came over Kansas State and Cincinnati. Christian Anderson was unbelievable in the Cincinnati. What a season he has had. But they play at Iowa State on Saturday, home against TCU, and then at BYU to finish. Iowa State, by the way, favored by 7 in that game in Hilton Coliseum. Is it maybe possible that we're overrating a little bit that how much of a downgrade they'll have without JT Toppin? Or do you think, Andy, that once they start playing better competition over a long period of time, we'll see the difference?
Yeah, again, I wasn't quite sure they could win the national championship, even, after they came back and beat Duke. I thought they were in that next group, and they're probably at the bottom of that next group now because Christian Anderson is that good. I mean, they obviously had 2 really good players, 2 elite players. Now they're down to 1, but they have a lot of other good rotation guys that can help them along the way. And this is good for the committee to see what they can do without Toppin. 2-0 without him. I think the Cincinnati win is monumental because Cincinnati had just beaten Kansas on the road. Cincinnati was trending toward getting on the back part of that bubble and being in contention, and then Texas Tech just knocked them back. These next couple of games are going to be very difficult. Maybe we'll have a different set of comments, in 2 weeks' time. But they've got a really good chance to hold their position, on that 4 line when the bracket comes out on Selection Sunday, because even though they're seeded, I should say, on who they are, they're selected by their overall body of work. And so if they maybe only lose 2 more games, how much does the seeding change dramatically? Maybe it goes down a line or 2, but not falling off. Remember the best example of this kind of situation was Kenyon Martin, but that happened in the last game that they played in their Conference USA tournament. So the committee never had a real chance to judge Cincinnati, and they dropped them from a 1 to a 2, which at the time people were kind of up in arms over because, hey, they hadn't played any games without him. But I thought the committee's hands were a little bit tied when you lose the player of the year. Here, they've got a little bit more data to look at without him.
Yeah, and the key, as we have said all along, whether it's Toppin or Caleb Wilson or Charles Bediako, is it only matters if the team has demonstrated that they are a very different team with versus without. So we only have a 2-game sample right now. So far, there's no drop-off. And the other thing is that Toppin, we know, is not coming back. Caleb Wilson is potentially coming back. So that's going to be the calculation people need to understand. It's not like the wins or the losses don't count when you don't have that player. But if he's not coming back and they are a much different team, then that is going to be baked into the cake. But so far, you can't do better than win the games that you've played, and they are 2-0. Okay, interesting game coming up on Saturday. Gonzaga goes at St. Mary's. First of all, this is Gonzaga's final regular season game as a member of the West Coast Conference. Next year, they go to the refurbished Pac-12. Here we are, late February. Once again, Gonzaga, all they're doing is winning. They have 2 losses all season. They got drilled by Michigan at the Players era. They lost at Portland. Now, I should say we're recording this on Wednesday morning. Gonzaga is hosting Portland on Wednesday night. You got to like them to win in that revenge game. By the way, they've got a freshman forward named Davis Fogel, who over the last 11 games or so has really come on to give them another score, 18 points, season high in the win over Pacific. Braden Huff, their big man, has been out for a while with an injury. They are hoping to maybe get him back for the first round of the NCAA tournament. Hard to see that's going to have much of an impact. Graham Ike, very quietly, an All-American type of season. Andy Katz, what do you think about this game at St. Mary's? And do you believe in Gonzaga as a Final Four caliber team? They're 10th on KenPom.
I think Braden Huff has to be a part of that for them to actually reach the Final Four in some form or fashion. But yeah, I mean, because they're going to be probably, a 2 seed, if they keep winning, then they're going to be in an advantageous position to, get to a Sweet 16 Elite 8. The problem is they're going to be out West. So that's good and bad. Good that they'll beat Portland, San Jose. The bad is they're not beating Arizona. I don't think they are. And so that would prevent them from getting to a Final Four of who they're matched up against. The 4th number 1, if you're put in the South with whether that's UConn, Iowa State, Houston, maybe even Florida, that to me is the more winnable region when we get to the bracket, which we'll discuss in a couple of weeks. But for Gonzaga, if they're paired with Arizona or Michigan or even Duke, I don't like their chances the way they would match up in that. I will say this. Gonzaga St. Mary's has been great for West Coast basketball, certainly for the WCC. I don't think that they will continue the series in any form or fashion in the short term. Certainly it's more advantageous for St. Mary's to have Gonzaga come to McKeon Pavilion in Moraga. I know a few in the crew hate going there, but I would love to see them in some form renew it at some time because it has been such a great rivalry.
Yeah, and the league has been good for Gonzaga, so we'll see how that is moving forward. The Braden Huff piece is interesting to me because obviously he's a great player, and obviously losing him has been a problem. But when you bring someone back who hasn't played for 2 months, and it's the first round of an NCAA tournament, we've seen players come back. It takes some time for the player to get up to speed with his conditioning. I know he's off crutches now this week, so he's making his progress, but it's definitely not automatic. Well, here they are without Braden Huff, and now you're going to add them. They're going to get better. Teams typically take a step back, and that's a risk that you have to manage for the NCAA tournament. So that'll be interesting moving forward. But just can't say enough about the consistent excellence of Gonzaga basketball. Here we are, late February, only 2 losses, metrics off the charts. Just another great season out in Spokane. All right, speaking of great seasons, Jon Scheyer's having another great season as the head coach at Duke, and he will join us on the Hoops HQ show when we come back. Stick around. And a warm welcome on the Hoops HQ show to Duke coach Jon Scheyer. John, thanks for joining me and Andy here, taking time out of your busy schedule. Let's start with the big win over Michigan. It was interesting to me in your post-game interview when you were kind of asked, like, what did you learn about the team? And your answer was basically to the effect of, I didn't learn anything. I just saw what I already knew. I think a lot of people, myself included, to be frank, weren't necessarily surprised that you won, but the way you won, matching Michigan's physicality, their size, their toughness, beating them as badly as you did on the glass. Both teams didn't shoot the 3-ball well. Has that always been the design for you with this team at the start of the season? We want to be physical and tough, and that's going to be our calling card? Or is that something that has evolved over the course of the season by necessity?
Well, you know what? I think that's naturally as a coach, or for me, I think you can't win games if you're not tough. But I think what struck me is the fact of how our team has been built from a roster construction standpoint. I think back to the first time we played on the road, that was an exhibition game at Tennessee. Who, when you go play at Tennessee, there's, as you guys know, there's nobody. You better be ready for a fist fight and the battle on the boards. And I thought without Malik Brown that game, I thought we showed an incredible toughness then. Dame Sarr was just coming back too. And the games we played along the way, the Michigan States, you play Arkansas, you play Florida. Man, these guys have been battle tested. And so that's what I meant. I think we found very quickly, our last year's group, we had the number 1 3-point shooting team in the country. We may not have that, but we have this strength of how can we win the possession battle? We can beat you at the rim. We can beat you in the paint, and then embracing that. So I think it's developed over time. But yeah, I mean, the tough mindset and all that is something I hope every team has. But this group, the identity has been fun to have it come along.
John, I was there last Monday, as you know, and the way you guys just absolutely took apart Syracuse defensively, and that has been this identity, and certainly that's how you won the Michigan game. It was a lower scoring game in terms of not in the 80s or 90s, and the buy-in that you've gotten from this group of a lot of headline guys that have come in with different reps that obviously like to score. How did you get them all together defensively to have that become this team's identity?
Well, that's been fun to figure out because we had our defense was really good at the beginning of the year. We took a step back the middle of January there. I think it starts with making sure you have the right guys that want to take coaching, that want to understand how to be the best players they can be. And so yeah, Cam Boozer's putting up all these numbers. He knows when he blows an assignment, you can get on him. He's pissed about it. He wants to get the next one. Isaiah's growth, this year where he's asking questions and scouting reports in our film sessions, every single one of our guys. And I think they respond to what you show you care about as a coach, what impacts playing time, and ultimately what impacts success. So I think the thing we've tried to do is just continue to paint that picture as consistently as possible. And our guys have done an incredible job. Our length has really helped us. We're actually longer than last year. We have really good individual defenders, but I think there's a mentality there with our guys that I love to see.
So I want to ask you, John, about Cam Boozer. Obviously, he's had an incredible season. I used to say about Zion Williamson that it's almost a shame that he was such an incredible athlete and dunker that he was, because people almost missed how good of a player he was and how skilled and how well he passed and fought the game. I feel similarly about Cam in that we talk about his passing ability, but to be a great passer, you have to be a great thinker. This kid never makes a bad decision. And it's so interesting that whenever you guys get late in the game late in the shot clock, coming out of a timeout, you always put the ball in his hands. With all of the games that you saw him play in high school, did you really understand how good of a thinker that he was? Or again, is this something that you've discovered since he's gotten at Duke and responded accordingly?
I knew that he had a gift for thinking the game. I think the thing that we can never fully see, though, like he never played with a big guy, in high school. He was always the biggest guy on the court. So, he was impacting the game in a lot of different ways. And again, he was still shooting threes. He was pushing the ball. Um, but one of the things we found this year is him handling is in pick and roll is a really important thing. And that can be a big setting. That can be a guard setting. He's obviously good in the low post. He's good at the elbows. You really can put him anywhere. And so I think that's the thing that's just jumped out to me, Seth, his ultimate versatility to impact the game with the ball in his hands anywhere, but also without the ball because he draws such a crowd too.
John, I was sitting there watching from you guys, and when I was there last Monday, it was, still the All-Star break. And so, for those who were paying attention, you had Cooper Flag, Concanipple, Malawach was there, Proctor was there. So, I mean, all these guys that were in the Final Four last year, you lose all 5 starters. And then you bring in the Boozer twins, and Carlos is there, who is part of this Duke brotherhood. And it just struck me about how you've been able to navigate all this, lose the entire sort of core of this group, starting 5 NBA guys. Then you bring in the twins of a former Duke player, and that can, sometimes depending upon what school you're at, that can have added pressures of coaching kids of a former star player. And yet you've been able to navigate all of that, I think, seamlessly from the outside. How have you done it?
Well, it doesn't feel seamless to me. It's, I think, when we knew we were losing a lot of firepower, obviously, after last season, and I was determined to figure out a way to get back here. We knew we had some special guys coming in. I thought the decision we made, most importantly, to focus on retention, I think was a game changer for us. I think in the world of when you can easily go outside and recruit really good players and bring them in, our decision this past spring was to double down on the guys that we went through that season with, 5 of them returning, Isaiah, Darren, Caleb, Malik, and Pat. So I think that was a huge deal. You bring in the freshmen who I thought just had great competitive spirit, like really good stuff about them. We added Dame Sarr late. And again, then you have to remind yourself you have to start all over again. You can't. And I think this group was unfairly being compared to last year's team. When you remember the end of last year's team, you don't remember the beginning of when we went through some stuff, right? And I think this group has just had a great way about them of going through their journey, sticking together, and I've just loved being with these guys because of it. So how have we done it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's recruiting great players, recruiting great character, having an incredible staff. To me, is the recipe how we've been able to do it.
Well, John, let's even take that bigger picture because, as we all know, the saying is you never want to follow the man. You want to follow the man who follows the man. And in your case, you followed the man. And you've done an unbelievable job. I mean, I'm sure maybe it hasn't felt seamless, but the numbers and the results pretty much indicate a level of continuity. I wouldn't say it's unprecedented in terms of following a quote-unquote legend, but it's certainly unusual. Why do you think this has worked so well where so many other instances have failed?
I think that one, I remember when I found out I was getting the job, and one of the guys I've really relied on for a long time, is my agent now to this day, but Jimmy Sexton. I remember Jimmy, when I was talking to him the next day, he said, "Listen, you're going to want to do a million things. Just get really good players." And that's where I focused on just how can we put together the best team with the best players that you can get. It makes you a better coach. I'm not here if we didn't get Derek Lively, right away, and Kyle Filipowski. And then you go Jared McCain and Cooper and Kahn and Tyrese, and you go down the line. I think that's the best thing we've done or continue to do. And then I think the second thing is I've been confident or been able to just figure out what's my identity as a coach while Coach K knowing, and obviously the values of what I've learned here is always going to be something that I continue to preach and build on. But there's that we've had good success with just, following instincts, and you can't try to be somebody else. And I think that's something I've really, Coach K and I talked a lot about before I took the job, and something that I've been able to do and our staff has done as well.
All right. I know you may dodge this one because we're still a long ways away from this, but I'm just curious, has there been ever like just a tiny bit where you looked at where the Final Four is this season, and you won it there in 2010, obviously one of the greatest endings that almost wasn't, because of Gordon Hayward's shot that didn't go down. But same building, 16 years later, I mean, it would be an unbelievable story, winning as a player, winning as a head coach. When did you notice where the Final Four is this year?
A while ago. Don't forget about 15 also.
Yes,
15.
that's right. 15 was there too.
Yeah. So, again, I'm all
At
for
91, wasn't it? Not the same building, but 91 was in Indianapolis too.
Correct.
Yes.
Exactly. So I'm all for good vibes. Like, I'm all for whatever signs that are out there. I'm all for the more that we bring it in and feel that it's our time, the better it is for me. So I'm all for it. We got, as you know, many steps we got to take to even start thinking about that. But I'm well aware where it's at, and nothing would make me happier to be back there to get a chance to do that.
All right, John, we appreciate you coming on. Last question. This is the high pressure question. All right. I want you to give me your.
I know this one.
I want you to give me your all-time Duke starting five, and I'll absolve you from the worried about whether you should put yourself on it. You don't have to make that decision. So
I was
John
not worried
Scheyer,
about that.
Yeah, you're ineligible. There's no wrong answer here. Give me your all-time.
Seth, can I have this thing that we did this with Gino? You're allowed to put a team together. This doesn't have to be 5 like great NBA Duke players. So if you want to put the best team together, that's okay too.
Okay. Every thing is wrong about this answer, because you have to try to compare Christian Laettner's career to anybody. It doesn't compare, right? And the different eras. But obviously, Christian, you're not going to have the greatest winner in the history of the tournament, on there. Christian Laettner, Shane Battier is absolutely on there. Grant Hill is absolutely on there. Johnny Dawkins is absolutely on there for me, with what he's done. And part of me, I'm sentimental too with what they've meant to the program, right? Like, if none of us are here without Johnny Dawkins, so how many is that? 4?
That's 4.
That's 4, yeah.
I get
think
one more.
You need a 2 guard.
I get one more. I mean, how are you not going to choose the leading scorer in the history of the school in JJ Redick? JJ. But again, I've coached some guys that could be on there. But those are my 5 I'm giving you. Not
That's
a bad
pretty
5.
good.
What do you think?
No.
Not a bad 5. Not a bad 5. Even Andy Katz and Seth Davis couldn't screw that up. So thank you, John Scheyer. Thank everybody for watching the Hoops HQ show. Have a great day.